Welcome to Tips, the Townsend Institute podcast series, a show produced by the Townsend Institute at Concordia University, Irvine. This podcast shares stories of leadership, coaching, and counseling experiences that have shaped the lives and careers of our guests, who then provide tips aimed toward helping listeners grow in both their personal and professional lives. I'm Dr. John Townsend, psychologist, organizational consultant, and author of over 30 books, including the New York Times best-selling Boundaries series. I'm also the founder of the Townsend Institute, and I'm excited to introduce your podcast hosts, Dr. Ashlie Andrew and Dr. Gilbert Fugit.
On today's episode, Gilbert and I sit down with Doctors Bill and Kristi Gaultiere, founders of Soul Shepherding, which provides Jesus-centered psychology and spiritual direction to leaders and ministries all over the world. They are also authors, with their latest book, Deeply Loved, hitting shelves this week.
That's right, Ashley. Deeply Loved is now available, and today we get additional insights from Bill and Kristi about their impetus for writing this book and the amazing work they continue to do in their local and global communities. Listen in as they discuss their latest work, all about receiving and reflecting God's empathy and grace. Let's get started. Welcome back, Townsend Institute podcast listeners. We are very blessed today to have our friends, Doctors Bill and Kristi Gaultiere. We are going to chat with them about all kinds of great things, especially their new book. And so I have Ashlie here with me too. So it's a full house, and we're excited.
Welcome, Bill and Kristi.
Thank you. We're so honored to be with you and all of your friends at the Townsend Institute.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So glad that you're studying leadership and coaching and counseling with tips.
Yes,
So are
we sure are. And we're excited to just be here on the front lines. And congratulations on the release of your new book. We're excited to delve right into that here today with some questions.
And let's jump into it. So Bill and Kristi, you are a friend, certainly, of Dr. Townsend and our Institute. Can you give us just a little background on your journey for those who may not know you that well?
Yeah, well, I met John a number of years ago, back when I was fresh out of graduate school in psychology, which included going to Rosemead, where John and also Henry Cloud went. And so I was with them sort of in the early days with the hospital program, became the New Life Clinic hospital program. I was co-director of the day hospital in Orange. For them on Monday Night Solutions sometimes, and the radio program. So, and then we've connected at John and Barbie and Kristi and I have connected at Mariners over the years as well.
So appreciate all that John has done, and then now this Institute is terrific. And then Bill, you also taught at Concordia University as well.
I taught psychology classes at Concordia, 30 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Wow. Back when it was it Concordia then or Christ College?
Christ College, Irvine, yeah.
Christ College, Irvine. Wow. So your roots go very deep with our Concordia system, even before the Townsend Institute was a thing here. So That's exciting to know. I didn't even realize that. Wow. Well, very good. Well, again, we're excited to have you here. And let's jump in a little bit to your new book titled Deeply Loved. And one of the main things about this book is that it tackles emotional barriers, showing the positive impact that empathy can have in our relationships, right? You write in your book that empathy is oxygen for the soul. Can you guys elaborate on that a little bit? I love that. Empathy is oxygen for the soul. Maybe talk about why that's so crucial in our relationships.
You know, empathy has been such a crucial part of my healing journey personally. And there are just times when I get going, I am busy, I have responsibilities, I'm carrying, and my soul begins to feel like it is drained. And I begin to feel tired. And when I stop and I ask for empathy and I join Jesus's empathy for me, I get such clarity. I get such renewed energy. It's like when I am not well oxygenated, my brain doesn't work as well. My body doesn't work as well. I don't sleep as well. And it's the same with empathy. I have found empathy to be incredibly powerful for my soul. Spiritually, emotionally, relationally, it's hugely helpful. It's one of the greatest ways that you and I love each other is by listening to each other with empathy.
And when we understand empathy and we're well trained in it, we can help people with the unconscious resistances that we have to empathy, grace, and truth. And of course, this is especially the work of psychology and in our soul shepherding nonprofit ministry. And we have an institute, the Soul Shepherding Institute, where we train spiritual directors. We have a 2-year certificate program in spiritual direction. And our approach is informed by Jesus-centered psychology. So we're a spiritual formation ministry, training spiritual directors, but we bring in the Jesus-centered psychology. And in psychology, we're really wanting to understand unconscious processes, defense mechanisms. And so that even as someone is seeking help from a coach or a spiritual director or a counselor, we have these unconscious resistances. It might be self-criticism, self-judging, trying to please people, drinking alcohol, but we have these different ways that we cope or we resist the pain and distress, or being honest about our sins. And so when we hold these things back, then it actually siphons out or spoils the empathy and grace that God is giving us through his word and through people.
I love that. And I think that's what's so unique about your take on the book too. And, I probably should have started with this before the first question, but I love to read your definition of empathy that you talk about in the first few pages, because we all talk about empathy, right? We know that it's a positive thing that we should, show and practice with others. But your part about just the faith-based piece of Christ's empathy, I think, is important. I love this. Let me read your definition. Empathy is seeking to understand someone's emotions, thoughts, and experiences to help them know they are deeply loved by God. That's beautiful. I love that. I think that's important too, because that really sets the foundation really for the rest of your book.
And it's such an honor that we have as followers of Jesus, and especially as people helpers, as coaches, counselors, spiritual directors, that we can be Christ's ambassadors. I mean, we're all called, 2 Corinthians 5:20. We're therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us, and to be reconciled to God. And I love the way Eugene Peterson puts it: become a friend of God's, for he's already a friend to you. And so the way that we listen and care for people can minister the love of Jesus. And then we just need to humble ourselves and realize that even as Christian leaders, well, I need a Christ ambassador too. Because this isn't only about crossing over the line to come into faith and be regenerated. Of course, it's about that. That's essential and precious. But salvation is a ongoing process. And so we need to receive God's love and truth deeper into our persons, into our souls. And empathetic relationships are primary in that.
We also really emphasize that when Jesus came to save our souls, that includes our emotions. Oftentimes we don't think about our emotions as being part of our soul and our needing empathy for that. But even the incarnation manifests the empathy of God, that God himself took on human form to become a human, to live, to suffer, to die, to experience everything we experience in our life, to suffer in every way we have suffered. He has that experiential empathy for us.
Speaking of experiential, you all wrote a great book and, have a lot of great references in there, but I think you've actually lived this out, right? You're actually doing this work. And so could you kind of share maybe a personal story from your own experience that it illustrates the transformative power of empathy?
Well, I grew up as a thinker and a doer. I think that a lot of that's genetic, oldest of 5 kids, but probably, I had both my grandparents worked in the steel mills in Chicago. My dad started off in the steel mills. I played sports, on the football field. You get injured, you get a cut, you bleed, you just rub dirt on it, and you move ahead. And so I'm not.
I still tell that to my kids, and they don't like that as much. But
it's not as well received.
I don't know why. I think it's a great way to do it.
I'm probably not a typical psychologist in that being type A and that tough it out mentality. The Lord has gentled me over the years and helped me learn to be empathetic, but I'm not naturally that way, and I'm wired around achievement and striving and very prone to self-criticism. And part of it probably goes back to being raised in an era and in a family where my parents taught me to be more independent as an infant by letting me cry it out, putting me in the basement until I just wouldn't cry anymore at night. And that's how they taught me to sleep through the night. And I think we know better than that now, that that's not the best thing to do, because kids need to be held and comforted and sort of eased into learning to become more independent and sleep through the night. But that was really the mentality for me all through my growing up years. I was the helper. I was the responsible one for younger siblings, and even for my mom and the things that she was feeling in her stress. And so I carried that all into adulthood. And so it was a journey for me to learn to accept that, well, I have needs and problems, and I have emotions too. I was always about helping other people. And that's how I started down the path of psychology, is I wanted to figure this stuff out so I could be more helpful to other people, especially in their spiritual life. And it was along the way that the Lord humbled me and said, Billy, you need this too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And that kind of then goes into this idea of self-empathy. And I think that's an important thing to note, because I think when we do think of the term empathy, it's always the giving. What can I do for others? How can I be in the well with others? Which is certainly an important thing, absolutely. But talk a little bit about self-empathy and why that really is just as important for our emotional and spiritual health.
Self-empathy is very important, because oftentimes somebody will give us empathy, but we'll spoil it because internally we're not agreeing with God's grace and love that they're mediating to us in that moment. So often early in our marriage, there would be times when Bill would be empathetic and listening to me, and he would say, it seems like you're not able to receive and trust my love right now. It seems like there's something internal that's blocking it. And he was right. It was my internal self-talk. It was me treating myself the way I had been treated as a child. Whenever I had emotions and needs, Kristi, snap out of it.
Right.
Kristi, you're too sensitive. And that was blocking me from being able to actually agree with God's grace through the empathy Bill was giving me. Also, I had this mistaken thought that empathy and self-empathy would be like self-pity. But it's not. We're not talking about swirling down and stirring up negative emotions and playing the victim and feeling poor me. No, self-empathy, as we write about it, isn't a self-help project. It's not this trying to hug myself and find answers within myself. It's an agreement with God's grace. So we say to our students and those we work with, you'll get well when you join I and God in caring for you. And we call this three-way empathy. And we need to be able to agree and receive God's grace in all three of those ways.
Three-way empathy. I like that. And the self-empathy part, really, that did strike a chord, because so often, right, we're afraid we're going to roll into the self pity world, right? And then you don't want to do that. So Deeply Loved, it really blends a lot of this. And I really enjoyed the book, both the kind of the biblically based and a psychology sound approach. Why are both of these perspectives, why are they necessary? How does it help us thrive?
Well, we teach that all truth is God's truth, as you teach in the Townsend Institute. So the Bible is inspired by God, we believe, and authoritative for all things in life and faith and godliness. But all truth is not in the Bible. We discover other truths in science and in creation and in the course of life, always consistent with God's word. And so theology is studying our God, our relationship with God, spirituality, our experience, our spiritual growth, our discipleship. Psychology is studying people and relationships. And so they really go hand in glove, because the Bible is so much about people and relationships. And so you can understand it from the top down, sort of like theology level, or you can understand it from the bottom up, the psychology level. And so we like the Townsend Institute, in our Soul Shepherding Institute, we live in that integration of Christ-centered spirituality and psychology.
I love that. Integration. You're teaching our language, speaking our
Yeah.
language over here. So integrating the two, and because they do go hand in hand, right? You're not turning one on and one off at different times. They're all such a key part. I'd like to go back real quick to this idea of empathy and showing it to others. And you had mentioned, Kristi, about kind of early on having kind of this block that kept you from being able to receive it. Do you have recommendations for those who maybe they're experiencing that? They themselves, they know they kind of have this block. They're not sure
Mm,
why or how to get through it, or maybe they see it in the people they're in relationship with. How do we work to kind of knock that down?
Great question. And it really is a growth in our own awareness and becoming aware that we are doing this, conscious that we are blocking it, becoming aware of what is our internal self-talk, where are those
Mhm.
tapes, from the past kind of playing, where is the enemy getting in there with lies and accusations that are blocking our being able to agree with God's grace and truth and love through empathy. It also can help us sometimes to be able to meet with somebody else who might more readily be able to identify those blockages and help us to see them and help us to explore why, where those are coming from, how deep rooted they are.
Mm,
Was there some trauma? Maybe that
yeah.
it was a part of that. I
mm,
know, part of my story was an abandonment wound because when I was born, the opening in my stomach was closed off and I couldn't receive nutrition. And so I
Mm,
had to go into the hospital. I had to have a surgery to save my
mm,
life.
mm,
I was separated from my parents during the time of that hospitalization and that surgery, and I
yeah.
experienced a very early abandonment. And so that had a key impact on my formation, including
Yeah.
my spiritual formation and my experience of God and my trust in God. And
Yeah.
so I needed to be able to get help, and I needed somebody who could actually have empathy for what that was like for me and what it's been like for me to live with that. And as I received that empathy, I was able to receive a greater healing from God and a greater embracing of my story, and even see that actually that was a sacred wound that was a
Mm,
part of what led me to my hunger and my desperation for God. And now I'm able to say, I'm really thankful for that experience.
mhm.
Instead, I repressed it, I denied it, I didn't want to go into the pain of it. So it really is a grace when we can open up and trust somebody else with the areas where we get stuck along the way.
Love that. Areas where we get stuck, and we all do, right? I'm sure at
yeah.
time to time. So, oh, that's beautiful.
So we
And the
need a
tr
safe person and place to do that with.
Yeah, and that's hard, that trust, right? And sometimes you talk to some students and other folks, and they said, I just feel like there's a lid on this, right? If I take this off and show empathy or whatever, I'm just going to be like in a big ball of tears in the corner all day long and things. So, how do you help people, safely kind of walk into this?
Well, a lot of it is articulating like you just did there, Gilbert. A lot of people will feel like, well, I don't want to be emotional because, yeah, it's just gonna, I won't be able to stop crying, and it makes me tired. It wears me out. I was talking to a woman just the other day, and that was how she felt about it. And what I helped her understand is, well, what you're not realizing is that what's tiring you out is not being emotionally honest and receiving empathy.
Mm,
It's that when you're emotionally honest and you ask for empathy, there's a part of you on the inside that's resisting this.
Mm,
And so you've got one foot on the gas that's in sync with the Holy Spirit. The Spirit of truth surfaces from the inner parts, our emotions, our needs, our brokenness that we need to confess. And so that's the verbalization, that's asking for empathy. But then these defense mechanisms are resisting that honesty, resisting feeling the pain, confessing the sin and the need. And so that friction now that's going on where you're fighting yourself, that's
uh,
exhausting you.
yeah.
That's what's making it so tired. And that's habituated. It's ingrained in our personality.
yeah.
So learning to get free of that is a process.
That sounds exactly like this idea of empathy fatigue. Something I'm sure many of our listeners can relate to, especially so many of our students, yourselves included, that are in these helping professions, right? I mean, you're just doing God's work, and it's wonderful to be able to help people along that path to uncover some of these things. But at the same time, that can be exhausting for people. What do you think of this idea of empathy fatigue, and how do um, how do you keep from letting it kind of overtake you?
Thank you. Such an important question. And actually, I learned this experientially because I hit a compassion fatigue and empathy fatigue. It was a wall in my work as a therapist, and I had to really kind of look and to see what got me there. How did I get here? I know about this. I even had warnings about this when I was getting my doctorate, and here I am. How did this happen? Well, part of it is because we really do need to learn to be able to steward our empathy. It is a gift God has given us to steward. We cannot be empathetic for the whole world all over all the time. I have to make choices. Where am I going to engage with empathy? And that means I can't engage with it when I'm watching the news or in movies because it's not loving to anybody. When I'm empathizing with these characters or these people, and it keeps me from being able to empathize with the people God has called me to journey with. So I have to make choices like that. But I also need to be very aware when I'm slipping into codependency, because there can be a fine line between, which is why boundaries and John's work on boundaries is so crucial and important, is because it's very easy to slip into being energized, repelled by the needs that other people have and neglecting my own needs and getting out of balance with that intake and outflow of oxygen. For instance, I cannot live on exhales alone. I have to be balanced. And so if we think about empathy like oxygen and that balance, but oftentimes I'm even trying to avoid my own emotions, I found, by caring for other people. I don't want to go into the pain of my own soul work, but I'd much rather journey with you and feel heroic and helpful and make an impact for you. I know how to do that very easily. It's rewarding. I get paid for it. There's all these reinforcements for it. So we get caught up in the cycle of codependency. Other people need help. We rescue. It drains our soul. We feel resentful because we're not getting our needs met. But then we still have these habits of avoiding self-care. Maybe we don't even know how to access it or what to do, or like you said, Gilbert, we're afraid the lid's going to open up. We're going to be ruined forever. We're never going to be able to, show up to work. But actually, the research and my experience shows the exact opposite. I'm so empowered when my soul receives the care that I need. It's very empowering. And this is why even so much of the research on emotional intelligence shows the power of empathy, because empathy is key in emotional intelligence and it's key in our leadership. I am so much better of a leader of our organization, of our staff. We have a staff of 20 internally and then another 60 spiritual directors. And I lead them so much better when my balance of receiving and giving empathy is where it needs to be. So in the book, we have a chart where we compare the difference between empathy and codependency on 10 different levels. We have the cycle of codependency. We write about these kinds of things, the difference between, carrying too much weight. We are told to carry each other's burdens, and sometimes we take that too far, or we hear, the teaching of, loving your neighbor, but we forget as yourself, Jesus said there. And so we need to get that imbalanced with that and remember that it's biblically based here, God's wisdom, and that he actually, when he says carry each other's burdens and each one needs to carry his own burden, he also says, and the Greek language there differentiates between when someone has a boulder or a knapsack.
Oh, interesting.
The word burden, it's two different Greek words there. Carry each other's burdens. It's carry each other's boulders, not each other's knapsack. For each one needs to learn to carry their own burden or their own load. Well, carry your own knapsack. So it's the idea that when trauma or a crisis or a crushing weight comes on us and we're overwhelmed, that's when we especially need the body of Christ to come around us, and we need empathy. And so we're called to come alongside our brother and sister in those places. But if we rescue them, I'll carry your backpack all the time for you. Well, that would be codependency.
I've never heard that before. Right? The boulder and the knapsack. That's a good.
That's a great metaphor. I mean, you can visualize it, right? That's so great. Wow.
And we need to be aware what's in our knapsack. So we travel a lot with our ministry, and we were taking a trip to Texas. And the next morning I woke up and, my neck, my shoulders were so sore. And I'm like, what's this about? What's going on here? And so I kind of did a body scan, got it checked. And then I remembered, my backpack yesterday. I had my backpack while we were traveling all day. And I was like, well, what's in here? Why was that so heavy anyway? And I had to look, and I did, my computer, books, water bottle, our leader's guide for teaching. It's like, that was heavy. okay, what do I need to do? I need to be able to carry this backpack. I need to strengthen my muscles, and I maybe need to look at some smarter ways to pack. But that's taking responsibility for what is the knapsack that I am responsible for.
If I would have rushed in and said, "Oh, I'll carry that for you," which I like to do, right? Then she wouldn't have done all that self-reflection and that personal responsibility work.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's so great. And I think it's safe to say when you talk about that compassion and empathy fatigue too, it's going to be different for everyone how they balance that, right? You talked about how Kristi, you experienced that. And so you had to kind of reflect on what do you need to do or change to help that balance out different, right? And that's where some of those self-care things come in play, right? I'm assuming for some people it's, hey, maybe you just need a bit more exercise. Where's your nutrition? Where's your time in prayer with God, right? Are there other kind of tips or tricks that you recommend with those in your ministry, your spiritual directors, who I'm sure face this idea of empathy and compassion fatigue from time to time? What other kind of more tangible take-home recommendations do you have to kind of help lessen that load a bit?
Well, Deeply Loved is full of tips. We have over 10 empathy practices that we teach throughout the book because we really want to make it practical. And as it relates to empathy fatigue, one of the exercises that we do is we lead you to Jesus, to look at the life of Jesus and to see how Jesus set boundaries in his own life.
Yeah, he sure did.
Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Savior, the perfect one, he wasn't always saying yes to people. He didn't heal everybody in a city. I mean, if I'd been in Jesus' position, I would have just set up camp in one city, like, okay, all these people need counseling or they all need coaching, and we'll go deeper. But he listened to God as Father, who had the perspective of heaven and omniscience, and said, no, we need to move on to another city. And Jesus did this not only for the sake of spreading the gospel to others, but also he would walk from one city to the next, and he would pray and he would meditate. He'd get some solitude and silence or time with friends, enjoying nature. And so when you look carefully into the scriptures, which we help you do in Deeply Loved, you see that Jesus took care of his own soul. He had needs. Jesus needed empathy. Certainly he needed empathy of God as Father, that he called his Father Papa. But he even asked people to care for him, listen to him, for hospitality and things like this. So if Jesus, the Son of God, needed empathy, if he needed to set personal boundaries for soul care, how much more do I?
I just remember a story a long time ago when we were trying to sell our house up in like Monrovia, and we had these neighbors that had this dog, and he would just bark all the time. And people would come over to open house, and they would just look at this dog, and like, we're not moving in next to them. Well, they were members at our church that we went to, and then they got sick, and we had to bring them a meal. So we had to make them a meal and bring it over there. And like, that was empathy fatigue. I was not having a lot of empathy for them at that point. However, then we end up getting it sold eventually. But I mean, that dog, oh my goodness, it was so annoying. But okay, so I probably needed this at the time. I wish your book would have been out, because you talk about 4 A's of empathy. So as a, deeper connection and our relationships and emotional health, what are these steps? How do they help us do it? Because people like me, we need these 4 A's, I think.
Yeah, I think we need a couple different things to really grow in empathy. And these 4 A's are some tips, some steps, there's some skills, some ways to practice and to expand your vision of it. But you also need to be able to receive and experience receiving it personally as well. But the 4 A's start with first asking. Jesus said, ask and you will receive. Asking someone, do you have it to listen to me and to seek to understand my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences? I find we need to concretely ask for that. I'm married to this brilliant man, this wonderful psychologist, and there are times when I will begin to share what I'm experiencing and maybe feeling overwhelmed. And he's got some great solutions, some great ideas, some great tips for me. And I'm like, I don't want them. In fact, I feel insulted by them. Because what I want is his empathy. I want to know he understands. I already know what I need to do.
Right.
I just am going to get the power to do it after I can unclog all these emotions I've been repressing that are making me so tired.
Yeah.
And as he listens and as he empathizes, and I know I'm not alone, and I know he understands, then I even feel supported to go and do what I need to do.
Yeah.
So that asking for empathy, I'll find I need to ask specifically, do you have it to listen to me with empathy? You know, I'm going through a lot right now. Right. In fact, today, both of my sisters are in the hospital. And, you know, Bill's been listening to me with a lot of empathy, and it's been really helpful to me, and it's empowered me to be able to minister to them. So ask. And then as you are asking, the second A is attune to emotions. You really want to listen for what is the person that I'm listening to experiencing emotionally. What are they feeling? Try to name those emotions. Try to understand the level of emotion for them. Is this, you know, maybe in the case, maybe you're listening to me talk about my sister's experience in the hospital. You might try to listen to understand, is this just a little thing, and is she just feeling sorry for them or concerned for them, or is this a big thing? Like, is this tapping into a history of grief here, or a bigger grief, or more fear about what's going to happen to them? And so as you're tuning, you might even check out and say, you know, well, it sounds like you're really concerned. I was like, yeah, I'm concerned, but I'm also really sad. See, I can then clarify for you and help you attune more to the emotions that I'm feeling, and you're helping me attune to it and name it as you're with me in it and understanding and tuning to my emotions. And then the third A is to acknowledge the significance for the person. So you're not only attuning to their emotions, you're validating that it's significant for them. So you might actually, if you were listening to me talk about my sisters with empathy, being in the hospital, you might acknowledge the significance for me, like Bill did, that, well, I have a close attachment to my sisters.
Yeah.
They're an attachment figure for me. And so there's more emotion and more threat to me when their health, when their well-being is threatened. That would be acknowledging the significance. And then the fourth A is to affirm strengths. And we emphasize this as this has to come last. This has to come as number 4. But the problem is it can shut somebody down from their own emotions and their own being able to be emotionally honest and to bring it into the light of God's love and grace and to receive his presence ministering to them in that. And so we want to always wait until the very end to affirm the strengths, but it's a vulnerable thing to be vulnerable, to share how you're feeling, to let somebody else in. And so it's very helpful if at the end we can do that fourth A and affirm the strengths of someone, like, you know, I really see you're showing a lot of courage in this time of trial and testing in your life. And I really respect you for that. And I also respect you for being courageous to be vulnerable to share with me today. I feel honored that you would trust me. You know, something like that would be an example of affirming the strengths of somebody as the fourth A of empathy.
Wow. That's great. I love that. We're taking notes as we go. And obviously this is all laid out in your book so well, but I think that's great. And it's a nice area to kind of start to close on here, because I think a lot of people, as they read the book, or maybe they're listening to our podcast here, we've sold them on the idea that this empathy is so important, right? So important to show people that they are deeply loved with Christ. But then when people want to know, well, how do I do that? You just got to it, right? It's that attunement. It's the acknowledging and the affirming. These, like you mentioned, Bill, earlier, are some of these practical steps that people can do. Whether you are, actually licensed in the helping professions, you're a counselor, you're a therapist, or maybe you're just, leading a group of people at your job. These are all things that really anyone can do. So that's just wonderful.
We so need to be doing them for one another in our families and in our small groups, our churches, our places of work, with our friends. It's we need friends that listen with empathy, and we want to be a friend like that.
As we start to wrap up a little bit, as you know, and our listeners know, we end all of our episodes with a takeaway tip. So what is just one tip you would like to leave our listeners with today?
Well, we would just love to encourage you that in any situation of a relational encounter like Kristi was describing, where there's an opportunity for a conversation, And that's where you want to go deeper than just like giving an encouraging word. I mean, encouraging words are great, but when someone is hurting or has a need, we want to go a little deeper. So it's just as simple as saying, how are you feeling? And then really listening. You're meeting with a friend over coffee and just, test the waters and see if you can take the relationship a little deeper. Maybe you're someone that longs to have an empathetic friend. Well, the first step, pray for that God would provide that, and then try to be that. And so as you're sitting over coffee with that friend, you say, well, how are you feeling? And then you just really listen. And then you can then begin to implement those, because that's the first A. You ask, how are you feeling? What's going on with you? You invite the other person to talk. And then when you attune to their emotions, the second A, you're inviting them to go a little deeper. That's what we do with empathy. We don't jump all the way down into the deep end that's going to intimidate somebody. We just go a little deeper than what you're saying. And so like in Kristi's example, so your sisters are in the hospital. I imagine this is difficult for you. That's sort of like a, difficult, probably easy for someone to say, yes, it is difficult, but I'm inviting them to elaborate. But I'm not going to say, oh, you're just bawling in grief, unless I know that's where they are, because it would be like too intense. It wouldn't be a connection. So the simple tip is just when we ask somebody, how are you feeling? And we just really mean that with our heart. And we let our face, our nonverbals show that we're interested. And then it's just like volleying a tennis ball back and forth. When I say, how are you feeling? I'm hitting the ball over the net. And then I'm listening. And then my friend shares a little more about that. And then I say, well, it sounds like you feel sad. And I'm hitting the ball back, and then they share about some of their grief. And then I say, well, tell me more about that. And so when we're a good, empathetic listener, helping someone to feel deeply loved by God, that's the way we do it. And more of the words are the other person's than mine. It's not like my opportunity to teach.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah.
It's my opportunity to listen and draw them out and care.
Right.
Yeah, not your time to lecture. So I like that, to actually listen and attune. Well, Bill and Kristi, this book is just coming out like this week, right? And so I know that they don't have to run by your house to get it. How can our listeners get a copy of Deeply Loved?
They can get a copy anywhere books are sold, but also if they want to learn more, they can go to our website, which is soulshepherding.org/deeply loved book. And there's all kinds of information about the book there, as well as some extra resources that they can get for free.
And on our Soul Shepherding website, you can learn about how to come on retreat with us. Every year, Kristi and I lead 8 retreats for 50 leaders like you who are listening, students in counseling and coaching, and pastors, missionaries, spiritual directors, and others. And then we also have a certificate program where we train spiritual directors. It's a 2-year program, and it includes these 4 of the retreats and an online training. And it can all be done online through Zoom as well.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well, again, congratulations on this new book. We thank you so much for joining us here today, and we wish you all the best as you continue to pour out to all those around. Thank you so much.
Ashlie and Gilbert, all of you who are listening.
If you enjoy the Townsend Institute podcast series, head to our website at cui.edu/Townsend to find out more about the certificates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees offered through Concordia University, Irvine. With programs in mental health counseling, executive coaching and consulting, and organizational leadership, we have a variety of faith-based programs dedicated to helping you fulfill your academic and professional goals, all the while furthering your competence, character, and connection. Again, that's cui.edu/Townsend.